Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon to all our 12th Monarchs out there in Monarch Nation, coming off a historical first ever home FBS win, 17-3 over Eastern Michigan. That puts our record at 2-1 going into conference play. And a big thank you to all those who hung in there on what I'll describe as a blustery evening, Ted. The wind and the rain, much appreciated. All our coaches and players were grateful for the tremendous support. Saturday night, the Monarchs were loud and proud, and we are grateful for that one. Speaking to the weather, I think it was a challenge to both teams with the wind and the rain throughout, and it turned into a field position game based on the fact that the weather did play a factor in this game. I think this win, I can best describe it as it was all about the defense in this game and the way our defense have played, and I'm so excited to say that. Really excited for our kids. Although we certainly have not arrived on defense, it was great to see that kind of progress on that side of the ball. I felt it the previous week at North Carolina State in the first half. That we were making some really good progress, and they obviously put together a complete game Saturday night with that performance. Conversely, on offense, we did not play well in this game. We struggled in the passing game. It was evident by the first two times Taylor tried to throw the ball. He really struggled early on in the game just with the football, and then the receivers struggled catching the ball. We had 2 turnovers in this game that were attributed to not being able to take care of the football in those wet conditions. And then very excited to report that the special teams made a big difference in this game, particularly with the field position. Starting on special teams, the best way to describe it is that we finally made an impact in the game. Our true freshman punter, Jarrett Servi, was outstanding in this game. This was the first time that he punted in a college game, and as I was congratulating him after his first punt and said, "How'd it feel?" he said, "Coach, it just feels good to get it over with." So he was pretty excited to get out there and play. He had 3 punts for a 40.7 yard average with a long of 47, and he did a really nice job on the one what we call sky punt that he had when he pinned them. The goal is to get him inside the 20, and he forced a fair catch on the 15. And then we punted 3 times out of the offensive formation, and Taylor had a 50-yard average with a long of 66 and put 2 of them inside the 20. So to punt 6 times and have 3 of them down inside the 20, that was critical in what was a field position football game. And then Antonio Vaughn with that big 46-yard punt return for a touchdown that put us up 17-3. He had another one earlier in the game that was called back with a holding penalty, but it was good to see us finally get an opportunity to return punts in this game, and that unit proved that they can be explosive and help change the course of a football game. Defensively, I mentioned I thought it was the difference in the game, the way we played. It was a very inspiring performance, and one that we got a lot of energy from on the sideline. I could feel our fans getting a lot of energy from that performance. The 3 points allowed is a school record, and we only allowed 215 total yards, and this really started up front with the performance of the defensive line. I felt like we were able to control the line of scrimmage for the majority of this football game, which was the major concern going in, that they would line up with that massive offensive line and that 270-pound tight end and just run it right at us. And Malik Gums, Chris Smith, Bumi Rotimi, Rashad Coward, and Galen Evans, we were rotating those guys through it. Defensive tackle, and they did an excellent job holding the point, and then we got some real good play from our defensive ends from Andrew Everett and Poncho Barnwell, Terrell Reed. Those guys, I thought they played solid football on the edge. At linebacker, when you look and see your linebackers having that number of tackles, that means that you're doing a nice job controlling the line of scrimmage. You see DJ Simon had 11 tackles. TJ Ricks had 10, and then Martez Simpson had 8. So when you see that you're getting that type of production out of your linebackers, you can attribute that to the defensive line eating up those blocks up front. And then in the secondary, we were in the right spots all night. There were only a couple situations where we were out of position, and it looked like they might be able to hit deep passes. And we only allowed 72 yards passing in the game. You know, obviously the conditions were hard for Eastern Michigan the same way they were for us, but we didn't allow any explosive plays. I think their long completion was a 31-yarder. That was a questionable catch that I asked to be reviewed on the sideline because I thought it was out of bounds. So a real nice job in all three areas, the D-line, linebackers, and secondary. Offensively, as I mentioned, we struggled all night with the conditions. We had the interception, which the ball slipped out of Taylor's hand. Vince Lowe was 5 yards behind the safety, and it looked like when I was initially watching the play develop on the sideline, it was going to be a 70-yard touchdown pass, and it turned out to be an interception, and then Antonio Vaughn fumbled on a long run. We gave him 2 consecutive carries. He was finishing off a 8-yard run, and he lost the ball. Taylor struggled with the wet ball. The receivers struggled. We had 8 drops in this game, which Taylor ends up 17 for 30. If we catch all those balls, he's 25 for 30, and he's up around 300 yards again, and there's some touchdown passes in there. I was very pleased with the run game. We rushed for 180 yards in this game, even with some of the minus yardage rushes we had, and taking a knee from the shotgun 3 times at the end of the game. We were on pace to be up there over 200 yards in this game, and we're going to need to execute much better offensively this week against Rice. Speaking to our opponent this week, Rice, they're 0-2 at this point, with a loss at number 17 Notre Dame and a loss at number 7 Texas A&M, which are 2 teams. After watching the video of those games, I think Notre Dame and Texas A&M are teams that'll be involved late into the season with a discussion for the national championship. So they've obviously played some very good football teams, and our biggest challenge is going to be playing a team in Rice that I think is a complete team. I think they're good in all 3 phases. Their kicking game's very good. Defense, offense, they're solid. They're the defending Conference USA champions. They're playing at home. They've won 9 straight at home. It's going to be hot down there. It's probably going to be 90 to 100 degrees at kickoff based on the preliminary forecast we've seen. Offensively, versus those 2 teams, Texas A&M and Notre Dame, they're averaging 425 yards a game on offense against 2 very good defenses. Their quarterback, Dreyfus Jackson, is a dual threat. He averages 190 yards passing and 73 yards rushing a game. They will run the ball with him. They'll run the option. They'll run some designed quarterback runs, so we're going to have to be very gap conscious with this guy, run or pass. They're rushing for 190 yards, very good offensive line. They're massive up front. They've got some veteran players in the O-line, and they're throwing the ball for 233 yards a game. They spread the ball around. They've got 12 different guys that have caught passes this year, so there's no one guy that you can focus in on with this team. On defense, I think this is a very solid defense. Their stats are a little bit misleading when you look at who they've played. They've gone up against 2 quarterbacks that are probably going to be Heisman Trophy candidates this year if they keep playing the way they have. They return 8 starters on defense. Chris Covington, their defensive tackle, who's 6'3", 300 pounds, was a first-team All-Conference USA player last year. They're fairly basic on defense in what they do. They play a 4-man front. They run a lot of zone pressures. They try to keep a safety deep all the time. They're very, very disciplined in what they do. They do a nice job with their disguise on the blitz, and they're fast and very physical on defense. And then their punter averages 43 yards a punt. Their kicker puts the ball out of the end zone on kickoffs. So as I mentioned, they're excellent in special teams. And we're playing the defending league champs. We're playing them at their house where they're very good. And this will be a major challenge for our football team this week, but one we're excited to take on, getting a chance to play our first ever Conference USA football game. And I'll take questions.
Bobby, given, like you said, Rice's first 2 opponents, the coaches kind of understand what they're looking at, but kids might not, in terms of just level of competition and what kind of players Rice has. How do you convey kind of what they're what you're preparing for?
Sure. Yeah, it's a good question. We're also going back, Dave, to last year and showing them some games last year where where teams beat them. and how they beat them, starting with the bowl game against Mississippi State, who's obviously Mississippi State's a better program than we are, but trying to show the kids these are things that people are doing to be successful. They were 10-4 last year, so they lost 4 games, and we'll show the kids some of the information from that. They're not much different this year in terms of how they play. I know David Bailiff, their head coach, and he's a good football coach. He's a real sharp guy, so he tries to keep things consistent for them. They're playing to the strengths of that quarterback, and like I said, he's a dual threat guy. And then they're playing to the strengths of their defense, which is their front. Their defensive front's very good. But we will go back to last year, Dave, and show them how people had success against them.
Any concerns at all about the efficiency of your passing game at this point?
I'm not overly concerned about it. It's still, as I mentioned at the start of the year, we're breaking in 4 true freshmen. In the passing game, we've got some different combinations going on up front, so it's making it a little bit more challenging with the protection for Taylor. And it's more right now of a timing issue, getting the timing down, which was very good against NC State. And then when you get conditions like you have Saturday night, the combination of wind and rain it's hard on everybody. It was hard on Taylor trying to grip the ball and throw it, and it was hard on the receivers trying to catch it. But I feel like we're doing the right things. We're making good progress there. Those younger guys are really starting to understand the route concepts, and we're gaining confidence in those younger players.
Did you envision, like you said, with having some new guys on the offensive line, did you envision that you would be as productive running the ball as you have been so far?
I had hoped we would. I'd hoped we'd be able to run the ball to take some pressure off of Taylor and take some of the pressure off those younger receivers. What we've found out through these first 3 games, Dave, is that we've got Gerard Johnson's a very good player. We knew that coming in. Now he's getting better. He's just a true sophomore, and he didn't really start playing till midway through last year. His breakout game last year was the Norfolk State game, so he hasn't played much football, but he's developing and getting better. We know what we have with Cam Boyd. He's a solid football player, and what we're finding out is that Ray Lowry is a very explosive player. Ray still needs to grow in understanding the protections, understanding the routes. But he's a good runner with the football. He's a very physical, punishing runner, and we didn't know that going into it. That's what we had hoped for. So it helps us having 3 backs and having 3 backs with different styles, and that's one of the main reasons why we've been able to be as successful as we had through the first 3 games running the ball.
Did you change at all kind of the way you block and what you guys are doing in the run game, or will you adapt kind of as the season goes along?
Yeah, we have, Dave. We've added some different scheme to complement that inside zone play. We've got a little bit of misdirection now coming off of that play, so teams can't just zero in on, if, hey, the back's lined up on the left, the ball's definitely going to be run to the right. We've added scheme now where the back can be on the left, and we could be running it to the left, which we didn't have in the past, and that's forcing the D linemen and the linebackers to play us a little more honestly at this point. So that's definitely helped the scheme that Coach Scott and the offensive staff have added. And we're still trying to figure it out. The offensive line are still trying to work to understand the leverage points, and then understand how to come off and pick up a blitz when it happens. So there's more things that the offensive staff wants to add to the run game, and we'll continue to do that throughout the year as we feel like the kids are getting more comfortable with it. And the other thing, Dave, that's been a big help to us, and couldn't use it much the other night, is those pass options off the run that Taylor has. Those were so good for us at NC State. We got a run play called, and if he sees something on either side that's uncovered, he can pull it and get the ball out there quickly. So, hopefully the conditions will allow for us to continue to grow that package Saturday.
Given, trying to rotate 3 backs and with new wide receivers, and as much as you rotate,
Right.
has that affected the pace at all in terms of getting guys in but still running as quick a tempo offensively as you would like. Has that slowed you guys down at all?
I don't feel like it has. No, I don't feel like we've been slowed down, because generally when we only substitute, same way we have in past years, if a receiver runs a deep route, or if the receiver's been on the field for 4 or 5 plays and they're starting to get a little tired. Coach Burden does a great job with that, subbing those guys out. And what we've tried to do with the running backs is only sub them within a series for the same reason. If a guy takes 4 or 5 snaps, and Coach Z can tell, he watches them when they get a little winded, he'll pull them out. So we've tried to maintain that same type of pace that we've had, which I feel is effective. I feel it wears down particularly the defensive linemen, which helps for our offensive line within a drive. And we've had some drives. Some of our drives we've had are 10, 12 plays, and that's a normal rotation we've tried to have throughout our past with how we're doing it now.
Any other questions for Coach?
Harry, you good? We'll talk after. All right, thanks everybody for coming. Thanks again, 12 Monarchs, for being part of history, and hopefully we'll be coming back with a victory from Houston, Texas, and Rice University this Saturday.